back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey, man, this time I'm going to do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rozansky. Coming to you once again from Freehold, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, usually powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good evening, everyone. I'm, of course, your host, Mike M3 Rozansky, coming to you here on this Monday, the 26th day of January, the final Monday of the month. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all staying safe, especially those of you like myself on the East Coast that had to deal with this crazy weather that we had over the weekend, in some places getting as much as 2 feet of snow. And I've got to say, I said it last week, I say it here once again, I'm done with the month of January. Honestly, the only good thing about the month of January is the NFL playoffs. That's it. There's nothing to truly celebrate about it. It makes you miserable every single damn day of it, especially when you wake up for work some days and you see the temperature at 9, like I did when I was going to work on Saturday morning. I'm done with it. I'm ready for it to be over, and I'm looking forward to February starting next week, where hopefully I will be back in the normal Connecticut School of Broadcasting studios. But like I said, we had the NFL playoffs to help us get through this really annoying, bothersome time in the schedule, and a playoffs that started with 14 teams is now down to 2, as we have our matchup set and ready to go for February 8th over in Santa Clara, California, where it will be the Seattle Seahawks taking on the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 60. A matchup that on one hand has me very happy, on one hand that has me absolutely miserable. Let's start with the happy part. Let's start with the, I guess you can say, joyous part of this. And there's really only a certain amount of joy that I can take out of the Seahawks, because they're not my team. They're not the team that I'm a season ticket holder for, or that I watch week in, week out during the regular season. But as I've made abundantly clear throughout this postseason, I am rooting for Sam Darnold. I am rooting for him to have his moment, to put away all of the naysayers forever. Shut up all of the critics, shut up all of the haters, because some of the criticism, while deserved at times with his bad moments to end his tenure with the Vikings, or some of his play, especially in that first matchup against the Rams this year, some of it has been taken way too far. Some of it, people are still reverting back to his days as the quarterback for the New York Jets. None of which should be truly blamed on him when you think about the situation he dealt with at the time with the Jets. A general manager in Mike McCagnon, who did not build a true offensive line around him. After he got fired by the Jets, you haven't heard his name since. He had head coaches such as Todd Bowles, who was not ready to be a head coach, and then Adam Gase, who I will argue is the worst head coach in the history of the Jets franchise, or at least in my recollection of the Jets franchise, because I'm not truly old enough to appreciate or depreciate how ugly things were with Rich Kotite in the mid-90s. But he did nothing but play head games with Sam. And by the time you got through those first 3 years, and then you had Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, they looked to move on and build with Zach Wilson, and that turned out to be a total mistake. Whether that was their choice or that was orders by Woody Johnson to reset with a rookie contract and the attachment he had built with the Wilson family, no one will ever truly know. But Sam Darnold's name has been dragged through the mud endlessly over the last several years. And finally, he's getting his due. Finally, he's getting to point back at all of it, the namesayers. Now, he'll never really be, see, I told you, because he's too humble a kid. And you think about it, he is still really young. The guy came into the league when he was, 20, 21 years of age. He's not even 30 years old yet. He's through 8 seasons in the NFL. And he's played for 5 different teams in that time frame. Whether it be with the Jets, having in and out duty with the Panthers after getting traded there, a backup for a season with the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan as his head coach, then going to Minnesota, taking the job when J.J. McCarthy got hurt, leading them to a 14-3 regular season, but having a bad performance against the Rams in the postseason last year, before finally having a team that was truly committal to him as their starting quarterback in the Seattle Seahawks. Finally having a head coach in Mike Macdonald that was not looking to move off him, not having a young quarterback in the wings, or a younger quarterback, should we say. Finally having a team that was truly built and ready and just needed a veteran quarterback to step in. And he wasn't just a passenger on this ride that has now taken them to Super Bowl 60. He has played his ass off these last 2 years. Has he had the regular season accomplishments of the likes of his fellow draft mates of Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen? No. But I ask you this. Has either one of those two won a conference championship? Has either one of those two made it to Super Bowl Sunday? They've won all the MVPs, all of the regular season accolades, but they have not had the postseason success yet that Sam Darnold has showed in this playoffs. Now, it does help that his team was the best team in the NFC this regular season, got to avoid wild card weekend, and only had to play 2 games to get to Super Bowl Sunday, compared to their upcoming opponent, the New England Patriots, who had to play 3 games to get to this spot. But they did that and earned that through a regular season that they went 14-3 and had to beat 2 division rivals once again in the postseason along the way, including last night's victory over the Los Angeles Rams, where I got to be honest with you, there were several times that I thought that the Seahawks were going to turn this into a one-sided ass-kicking, where it felt like on several occasions Seattle was just going to blow their doors off, especially Sam coming out very strong on the first drive of the game with a long pass to Rashid Shaheed, and then moments later Kenneth Walker finishing off the drive with a short touchdown run. And you just could feel the electricity in that place. You could feel the momentum from that crowd with how jacked up they were, with how revved up they were. But the Rams, they kept fighting. The Rams kept matching them point for point, drive for drive in this game. And you watch Matthew Stafford, he's 37 years old, but even despite whatever back or neck issues he had during the preseason and training camp, he looks like a guy that could play another 4 or 5 seasons in this league. He looks like a guy that, as long as the back doesn't crop up again, could have that next route like Tom Brady playing into his 40s. Now, a lot of it is, there were some stupid moments by Seattle, including the penalty by Rico Woolen in the third quarter. When you have your opposition stopped on a 3rd and 12, and it looking like, oh, you're going to get the ball back. You're up by 11 points in this game. The Rams defense, even for as high-powered as they were throughout this regular season, they were not making stops. They were not able to contain this Seahawks offense, especially had no answers for Jackson Smith and Jigba, who was seemingly having a field day no matter who was covering him throughout this game. But you got the taunting penalty by Rico Woollens late in that third quarter that gave the Rams second bit of life, that gave the Rams a chance to say, hey, we're still in this game. And moments later, Stafford picks on him for that touchdown to Nakua that got this back within a 1-score game. And every time it got within 1 score here, even despite how good Seattle's offense was, there had to be that little bit of doubt in anybody like myself who was pulling for Seattle, or that little bit of doubt in the minds of all of those who weren't truly ready to wrap their arms around the Sam Darnold redemption story, because we've seen this before. Hell, we've seen it against the Rams in this season before. He had turned over the ball 6 times in their 2 matchups, but he was as cool as a cucumber. He did not bat an eye, especially on that final drive where McDonald had the confidence in his quarterback to back up and throw, even on multiple third downs where you're thinking, oh, let's just run the football, run the clock out here. But he trusted his quarterback. He trusted his offense, knowing that his defense was probably a little bit gassed with how much time they were on the field going up against this Rams team who was not wilting under pressure and just simply ran out of time in the end. Now, the one person that does deserve criticism, but you're never going to hear that from the national media. You're never going to hear anybody bring this up. You're never going to hear people even bring any doubt about them, because it seems as though we've already been willing to crown someone as a GOAT, as someone that's a future first ballot Hall of Famer. But I'm sorry, Sean McVay deserves a lot of criticism for how ill-prepared he seemed throughout this game at times. Because in this second half of this game, you're watching a lot of mistakes and blunders by the Rams, mostly based on his own decision-making. Whether it be on special teams with Xavier Smith muffing that punt after your defense had just stopped the Seahawks on their opening drive of the second half. You're getting the football back, and Xavier Smith stumbles over his own feet, muffs the punt, gives it right back to Seattle, and within 30 seconds, Darnold's connecting with Bobo in the end zone to take an 11-point lead. Or how about later on in the game when you're in position to either take a lead or come within 1 point of the Seahawks? Your offense was humming at this point. You had seemingly stopped the Seahawks ground game. They had become one-dimensional at this point. You have 4th and 4 at Seattle's 6-yard line. No thoughts of just taking the points and hitting a chip shot field goal to come within 1 point there? You still had 5 minutes to go. You would, as I said, turn Seattle into a one-dimensional team. But a lot of that goes back to the Nacua touchdown that was really a gift from Seattle and the lack of discipline by Woolen early on there when you didn't go for 2 to make it a 3-point game. You just continued to rely on analytics or what your spreadsheets are telling you. But even with how much Stafford was gashing that Seahawks defense, Witherspoon stepped up in that moment and made the play necessary. And I don't understand what the hell he was doing with the timeouts in Seattle's last drive. He calls a timeout after the Seahawks just barely, and I mean barely, it was kind of questionable there whether Kupp had gotten the ball across the line to gain. But he calls a timeout in that spot to give his people up in the booth more time to review the play, when if he had thrown the challenge flag there after that timeout and was wrong, which it seemed likely he was going to be if you're watching the Fox broadcast, it would have cost him his final timeout as well. So why don't you just, if you had any question in that moment, use the challenge rather than a timeout? Because then one play later, you end up using your final timeout anyway and left you screwed for the final 3 minutes of the game. Then you get to the final drive and Stafford's throwing the ball down the middle of the field. Rather than just 2 plays there, maybe you get another play or 2 there. Or maybe you're relying more on the sidelines. Or when Nacua is tackled down near midfield on the final play, you can call a timeout with 2 seconds left to go, and you at least give yourself a shot at the Hail Mary play in the final couple seconds of this game. But instead, he was just losing control of the situation. You're never going to hear, as I said, people criticize this guy. It seems like he's been put on the same mantle as the likes of Andy Reid or even Bill Belichick. And I know the guy is just turned 40 years old. But let me remind you, in 9 years, he has only 1 championship. And that took a Bengals collapse in the second half and maybe the most dominant half of football we've ever seen from a lineman in Aaron Donald for him to get that. So all of this dancing around, criticizing Sean McVay needs to stop. He's open to criticism just like anybody else in the sports world. You're all just doing that because you refuse to celebrate and acknowledge the redemption arc that Sam Darnold has been on. Would I have liked it to have been with the New York Jets? Of course. But I don't blame Sam Darnold for it. I blame the situation he was in at the time. He had no offensive line. He did not have Breece Hall or Garrett Wilson at that time. His best weapon was Robbie Anderson, who never ran routes. And he had awful coaching and bad leadership. But then again, you could say that about the Jets during the entire time that Woody Johnson has been the owner. Hell, I'm sure Viking fans today are feeling the same misery as they're not in the postseason. They're watching J.J. McCarthy either make constant turnovers or always getting injured, and they watch Sam 1 year after winning 14 games for them now lead a team to their 4th Super Bowl appearance in the last 15 years. So it's a remarkable story. I'm so happy for Sam Darnold. And now he has one more test ahead of him. He has one more test coming up in 2 weeks. And wouldn't you know, it's going up against the New England Patriots. Let's go, Sam. We're all in Gangrene Nation rooting for you. And I'll give you some thoughts on those Patriots coming up because I got to be fair here. I got to tell it like it is and give them their kudos where they deserve it. Give you also some thoughts on some things going on in the NBA right now with both the Lakers and the Knicks, mixing some baseball. There's a lot I want to get to on this Monday evening over the next about 40 minutes or so here. Glad you guys could join me tonight. And like I tell you, each and every single Monday or Tuesday or whatever day I end up recording this podcast, please sit back, relax, help put your feet up if you feel like it, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Seen a lot of whining, complaining, outright annoyance from one fan base over the last couple of days. A lot of outright misery, I guess we should say, from the Pittsburgh Steelers fans, whether it be my brother-in-law Ryan, fans on social media, Stephen A. Smith, who are all, should we say, uninspired by the Steelers' choice to hire Mike McCarthy as their next head coach. And I said this a couple of weeks ago. I will say it again. I'm not sure why there is this negativity that surrounds Mike McCarthy when you look at his years as a head coach. 18 years as a head coach in the NFL. He has a 61% win percentage in the regular season. Yes, he did win one Super Bowl 15 years ago with Aaron Rodgers, and there's people that would have liked to have seen more with them together, especially when Rodgers was in his prime and you could argue was the most talented player in the sport at that time. But he had success in Green Bay. He went on after a one-year sabbatical after his time there and had success in 5 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys, including making the playoffs in 3 of those 5 years, winning 12 games 3 years in a row. And you think about how difficult that job is when you have to deal with Jerry Jones, not just his weekly radio show, but the fact that that guy speaks to the media before they speak to McCarthy or any of the players after every game, and he's in the locker room after every game, that can be a pain in the ass to deal with. This guy has had success in this league, and I'm not sure why there's this negativity that surrounds him. Maybe it's because he is kind of a low-key guy, doesn't have the biggest personality in the world, is not going to have that kind of quote that Mike Tomlin was famous for in his post-game pressers. But this is a very good coach. Is he a guy that is going to go to Canton, Ohio someday? Who knows? Maybe if he wins another Super Bowl with the Steelers, although we have yet to see that head coach that wins a Super Bowl in multiple spots. But he is a damn good, successful head coach going to a franchise that has had a lot of success and typically sticks with head coaches for a long time. I mean, this is only your 4th head coach in the last, 50, 60 years here or something along those lines? He's had as much success as your previous 2 head coaches in Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin. So what's all the complaining about? Steelers fans, you kind of did this to yourself here. Remember week 13? You were chanting fire Tomlin? You don't think that had some kind of an impact here where got the ball rolling in Mike Tomlin's head saying, you know what? I don't need this ish. I don't have to deal with the disrespect from this fan base after everything I've given them nothing but winning seasons over my 19 years as head coach here. Peace, homie. I'm out of here. So this is what you get. Really, what did you think? You were going to get the second coming of Chuck Noll? You got a good head coach here. Stop all the whining and complaining. At least he doesn't coach with over-the-top arrogancy like we saw Sean McVay do yesterday, or earlier on in the day you saw from Sean Payton in the AFC Championship game. And for as much criticism as I gave Sean McVay for his performance in the NFC Championship game, Sean Payton deserves even more than that. Because Sean Payton comes across as one of the most unlikable jackasses in all of the world of coaching. It doesn't matter the sport, doesn't matter the team. Sean Payton is as unlikable a human being as you're going to find in the world of coaching, because he always thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. He always thinks that everything he does is going to work. He thinks that if he touches water, it's going to part like the Red Sea. And yesterday was hopefully a reality check. Hopefully was that cold dose of reality that no matter how much you coach somebody up, in the end, everybody has their limitations. Now, it sucks that they lost their quarterback last week, and they were having to rely in a backup in Jarrett Stidham, a quarterback that has not thrown a pass in a regular season game in years. But Sean Payton got way ahead of himself with how he was coaching this game after their first couple of drives. Yeah, you get a long completion to Marvin Mims, set up your first touchdown of the game. But you really didn't think that you were going to be motoring up and down the field against this Patriots defense. A Patriot defense that had shut down the Chargers. A Patriot defense that made life a living hell for CJ Stroud last week, and has kind of been one of the underlying storylines of this NFL season, despite how great, and I mean great, Drake May has been. And he'll likely be, if not the winner, the runner-up for the league MVP this season. But you really didn't expect that you were just going to have that easy a time with a backup QB going up against this defense. And you saw his arrogancy come out when you have a 7-point lead. You were able to get in the red zone once again against the Patriots, and you decide to have a I'm smarter than you moment on that 4th and 1 at New England's 14-yard line in the second quarter. Rather than just go for the chip shot field goal, go up 10 points when your defense was making life hell for Drake May. And that they had 23 total yards in their first 3 drives. And you decide not only just to go for it on 4th and 1, but you decide to get cute and have Stidham roll out for some kind of play action pass there when the Patriots read it like a book. They blitzed him and sent his ass right to the ground and made it a complete non-play. When you could have just kicked the chip shot field goal, go up 10 points. Listen, I think Tony Romo's as annoying as anybody in the world. But he was right. He first guessed it, and he was right on the money there, because you go up 10 points there, it puts the Patriots on their back foot. They're not able to run the football as much. And as we saw as that game went on, field position and playing defense was going to be of the utmost importance. When you consider the weather conditions that started to pile up, when you consider both field goal kickers were off their game, although in the case of Will Lutz, his missed field goal was more credited to Leonard Taylor getting a hand up and tipping that rather than the weather conditions or him truly being wide left on that kick. But this Patriots offense, they were doing nothing in the first half. They had 46 total yards in their first two drives. And the only reason that it was tied at halftime is because Jarrett Stidham, a quarterback who's not used to this type of game action, started to feel a little bit of pressure, and rather than just either throw the football away or eat a sack on third down from his own 33-yard line, he decides to just shovel pass it, and it turned into a backwards pass, which I understand the referee's intuition at that point, thinking that it was a forward pass or that it was intentional grounding. But sometimes you got to hold the whistle there, because Ponder looked like he had a walk-in touchdown. It looked like it should have been tied up there. Now, you got fortunate. The Patriots tied things up 2 plays later on Drake May's 6-yard touchdown drive, but you had to let them play on there and continue on with this. And the Patriots, let's face it, they didn't do anything offensively spectacular in this game. They didn't do anything jaw-dropping or anything that you're going to send to NFL Films that says, wow, what a great offensive display. But they did what was necessary to win. They saw that their offense was lacking and knew, or at least probably had some kind of intel on what was coming with the weather. Because with 5 minutes to go in this game, depending on which side of the aisle you sit on, this turned into a winter wonderland and kind of a fun game to watch with how the snow was coming down. I personally enjoyed it. I know that there's a lot of cruds on social media that were whining, crying, complaining, saying, oh, this is why we should have domes. This is why championship games should be played on neutral sites. But no, all right. The Broncos earned this right to have this game. They played 17 regular season games, were the best team in the AFC. It just so happens that they didn't have their quarterback for this game due to a kind of flukish injury in the previous week. And I'm sure if they have Bo Nix, maybe it's a different story here. Maybe we're talking about the Broncos moving on to Super Bowl 60. But you got to give the Patriots their credit here. Even despite how much it disgusts me, how they've been so easily able to turn things around post Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, having 2-3 down years there, having a brief stint with Gerard Mayo as the head coach, Mike Vrabel, Drake May, Josh McDaniels, and that defense have been able to turn this back into the Patriots' nightmare that we all dreaded for 20 plus years. Their defense has been awesome this postseason. And you look at, they're barely allowing 200 yards per game. They've got into the quarterbacks, making their lives a living hell. Yes, Drake May's been a little bit sloppy in some of these games with the football, but that defense has been able to back him up and allowing the fewest points by a team going to the Super Bowl in over 25 years. And Drake May, even despite being a second-year quarterback, realized that, hey, I don't have to do anything spectacular here. Just don't F this up. Just keep my team in position to win this game. And once it got to 10-7, the snow coming down, they could see that the situation was too big for Jarrett Stidham. They just ran the football. Whether it be with Stevenson, whether it be with Drake May calling his own number and running the football himself. They made the plays necessary to survive and advance. And at this point in the year, you don't have to win via style points. No one's going to remember at the end of the day how many points you won by or how many points you scored. What they're going to remember is that you won and you advance to another Super Bowl. As sickening as it is, as much as it drives us all crazy, the New England Patriots are back in the Super Bowl. And now our one hope to stop them from winning their 7th title this century is Sam Darnold and the Seattle Seahawks out in Santa Clara, California in a little less than 2 weeks.
I'll be back.
Sam Darnold's revitalization of his career and turning things around, his redemption arc, is not the only reason I was celebratory about the Seahawks win yesterday. Let's be honest. The city of LA has had way too much happiness in the sports world over the last, should we say, 18 to 24 months. They needed something negative to go their way. I mean, when you consider the Dodgers winning back-to-back championships and continuously adding big free agents, most recently Kyle Tucker and Edwin Diaz. You got the Rams, who have never been bad or out of the mix in the Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford era. This coming Sunday, February 1st, will mark the 1 year to the day of the most hideous trade in NBA history, when the Lakers acquired Luka Doncic from the Dallas Mavericks and really only gave up Anthony Davis and 1 first-round draft pick. So that city deserved some sports, should we say, misery or something to be upset about for just 1 day. I mean, come on now. Everything can't be bright skies and sunshine for the Los Angeles area, the Los Angeles sports community as a whole, can it? But then you look at what's going on with the Lakers right now and what is going on with their in-house drama, should we say. There's a lot of things where you look at with the Lakers and you say, maybe it might not be so much bright skies and happy paradise for the city of angels after all. Because now you're starting to hear these rumblings of inner turmoil between LeBron James and the acting president of the Lakers, Jeannie Buss. Yes, her family doesn't have the lead controlling interest of the team anymore, but she's still the team public governor, as they put it with all of these franchises. She's still the public face of controlling interest of this team. And you see these comments back and forth with LeBron talking last week where he says he's accomplished his goal of restoring excellence to the Lakers organization, winning a championship, and doesn't care what anybody, including Jeannie Buss, feels about him at this stage of his life. And then the article that came out via ESPN's Baxter Holmes, talking about the Buss family selling the franchise to billionaire Mark Walters, as well as explaining the alleged strained relationship between Buss and LeBron James, where Jeannie Buss privately feels that LeBron James takes too much credit about the things that they've accomplished, and there hasn't been enough credit toward the Lakers being attracting LeBron and saving their floundering franchise, or how he pushed so hard for the Russell Westbrook trade, and we see that kind of didn't work out, and that Jeannie feels like LeBron doesn't take as much accountability for him. And they've given LeBron everything that he's wanted in his time with the Lakers. They made the trade for Anthony Davis after the 2019 season. They traded for Russell Westbrook. Hell, they drafted his son, and his son is an active member of that roster really not playing much, but mostly kind of hanging out with dad at the job. I mean, I know they've tried to play nice with Jeannie coming out with a statement to The Athletic last week saying that it really isn't all that bad, and had a bunch of great things to say about LeBron James, even been changing her Instagram profile picture to a picture of herself and LeBron James together. But it's good to see a little bit of, should we say, drama, or if you want to call it negativity, affecting one of the Los Angeles franchises, including the other nonsense. And I think this one is a bigger deal, could be a bigger hindrance on the Lakers. Listen, I'm all for people expressing their opinions, getting their voice out there, saying how they feel. But sometimes you gotta put some people in check. Sometimes you gotta tell certain people in your life to shut the hell up and stay in their lane. And that's exactly what LeBron needs to say to his agent, business partner, lifetime best friend, every other title you want to give to him, Rich Paul. It's one thing, all of the back channeling that Rich Paul does. I mean, he played a big part in getting Anthony Davis from the Pelicans over to the Lakers. And it may have not been the most clean exchange in the world, but he did get LeBron what he wanted in the end. But when you're an agent representing a player or potentially multiple players on a team, you cannot go on a podcast and make suggestions for not only a trade that your lead client's team should make, but also talking about a player and affecting his potential earning power. Because Rich Paul was recently on the Game Over podcast with Max Kellerman, a podcast that he regularly does with him, and suggested a trade that the Lakers should make with the Memphis Grizzlies that would bring Jaren Jackson Jr. to Los Angeles for a package that would consist of a future first-round draft pick along with one of the young budding stars of the Lakers, Austin Reeves. And why this comes off as so controversial is because Austin Reeves is coming up on a summer where he could be offered a max extension. From the Lakers, he could get a 5-year, $241 million contract. But if he was to be traded, the team that acquires him could only offer him 4 years for $178.5 million. And yes, people, that is a big difference. He would be losing out on $3.6 million per season because the average annual salary on that Lakers deal would be just over $48.2 million, while with another team, he could only make $44.6 million. And it would take away 1 year of security on his contract. Now, we know most of these deals, the final year of the deal is a player option anyway. But for him to be going out there and speaking about a player that he does not represent, a player that is due a whole large sum of money and does not have that big lockdown deal yet. Now, Austin Reeves is making a good deal on the final year of his 4-year, $53 million deal. But we're talking about a life-changing contract coming his way. So I don't blame his agents for confronting Rich Paul last week courtside, because that kind of stuff is a bunch of BS when you're talking about someone else's money. And LeBron really needs to put his boy in check there and tell him to chill the F out. Now, while we're talking about the NBA, I know they've won a couple of games in a row here, but the Knicks have been playing like flat out trash for the last 13, 14 games here. And I don't know whether you want to credit the players-only meeting that Jalen Brunson held last week after they got annihilated at the Garden by the Mavericks on MLK Day. A Mavericks team that was without Anthony Davis, still without Kyrie Irving, and dealing with multiple injuries along their front line. But you could not be getting blown out by a Mavericks team that looks like they're edging toward the lottery once again. I don't care how great Cooper Flagg has been. Still, you're the Knicks. You're one of the top teams, or should be viewed as one of the top teams, and not just the Eastern Conference, but all of the NBA. You got off to a phenomenal start this season, going 23-9. You won the NBA Cup, but over the last month, you've really looked like a disinterested team. I don't know whether you've been tuning out Mike Brown. I don't know whether it's just one of the dog days of the NBA season, and you're kind of counting the days till the All-Star break or the trade deadline, hoping that maybe you could get some insurance, whether it be another big man in there or some depth added to this roster, even though this team looks deep enough. I mean, Mike Brown has been playing everybody, getting some of these young guys some burn, unlike last year under Tom Thibodeau. Or it's something internal, whether it's been the fact that you've had some nicks and bruises along the way where seemingly everybody has missed a little bit of game action other than Mikal Bridges for something minor here or there. Or it's the disappearing act that you continuously get from Karl Anthony Towns, where in big games he either doesn't step up or spends way too much time bitching and moaning to the referees. And for a big man, he is incredibly soft. You see him get knocked on his ass left and right, and rather than get up, show some toughness and fight through it, he's looking up at the referees begging for a foul. And you look at Saturday night, for example, you barely held on against the Sixers in Philly, and that was a game in which Towns fouled out, and a large chunk late in that game, you had to rely on Mitchell Robinson, who, as great as he is defensively, is a complete zero offensively, and you know he's somewhat made of paper mache. So something has got to be figured out, because this Knicks team on paper is too talented to be playing like this, to be going at a 2-9 clip over 11 games where they're averaging 10 less points per game, not shooting as well from the field in those games. Whether you got to make some kind of trade, I don't mean breaking up the roster and trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's the kind of thing you don't do in season. If you're going to bring Giannis to New York, that's something you wait for the offseason. You give this roster a chance, and you give Mike Brown a chance to coach this team. But they got to wake their asses up. All right, you can't get blown out by bad teams. You should not be sitting there in fourth in the Eastern Conference, and you should not be having people sitting there on a day-in, day-out basis questioning their toughness when they're going up against Detroit, who badly wants them after they lost to them in the first round last year and has already kicked their ass once this season, behind a Celtics team who's without their best player and seemingly doing it with Jaylen Brown dragging them throughout this season. This Knicks team is better than that, or should be better than that. And this is a team that you're not just saying, oh, let's have a first round series at home and see how things go. No, you have expectations, and those expectations are to get to a finals and take your best crack at things against either the Spurs or the defending champion, OKC Thunder. And you're not going to get there with the crap that you've seen from this team so far in the month of January.
I'll be back.
Cooperstown is in for quite a party this coming summer as we have now made the center field roster of the Hall of Fame even deeper with last Tuesday's announcement that both Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones will be inducted amongst the greats in the Baseball Hall of Fame. We already knew that Jeff Kent was going in as he was voted in by the Contemporary Era Committee back in December. But the ballot, and I gotta be honest, I had forgotten when the date of this was, so it was kind of surprising to me when the news broke after I recorded last week's podcast last Tuesday night. But two very deserving candidates going in with Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones. In the case of Carlos Beltran, he got in on 84.2% of the writers' votes on his fourth year of eligibility. And let's face it, a lot of this on why he had to wait for his fourth year is due to his attachment to the Astros sign stealing scandal when it comes to their 2017 championship. He's kind of viewed as one of the ringleaders of that, him along with Alex Cora, who was the bench coach at the time, and several of their star players. But he's been the only one that has been truly punished from that, because Cora only spent 1 year away from being the Red Sox manager and got the job immediately right back. None of the players were suspended. They didn't get the rings taken away from them. Beltran, he was named Mets manager, got fired immediately after this news came out, and has been held against him ever since. Has not got another coaching job in the big leagues. Had to wait 4 years for his moment to shine in Cooperstown when you could argue he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. He has the credentials for it. 9-time All-Star. 3-time Gold Glove winner. Rookie of the Year in 1999. Over 20 seasons, he had over 435 career home runs, over 2,700 hits, and a large majority of that done playing center field. Was one of the best players of his era. Was not, quite the MVP level of the likes of Albert Pujols or A-Rod during that era, but still a remarkably great player. I think Met fans have finally gotten over him striking out to Adam Wainwright to end the 2006 NLCS, but he had a really great career. The other thing that may hurt him is he played for so many teams over the course of his career. You tend to see the great players that were with one team or maybe two teams at the most get in quicker than the guys that were jumping around. I mean, you look at him. He was a Royal. He was a Met. He was an Astro multiple times. He was a Yankee, a Texas Ranger. So he played in a lot of different uniforms throughout his career. Was a Giant for a brief period of time. So I'm glad he's finally getting in. And Andrew Jones, I have not been the highest on, mostly because you look at after his first 10 years in the big leagues, he seemingly fell off as a player. After age 30 was kind of a guy that seemingly just hung around as a platoon player, guy off the bench. But he had a very solid career. Was not the greatest as far as hitters are concerned, was more of a slugger, but as largely a center fielder over the course of 17 years, he hit 434 home runs. He's one of 6 outfielders to win 10 or more Gold Gloves. And when he burst upon the scene in 96, he was awesome in the postseason for the Atlanta Braves. I mean, there's some off the field stuff with him, but that kind of stuff should not be really held against anybody when it comes to their playing career. I mean, unless you killed somebody or spent some time in jail, that's a completely different story. And Thank God he doesn't have that attached to his name. But he had a really, really good career. Like I said, not my cup of tea when it comes to being a Hall of Fame inductee. But you look at the credentials, you look at the overall numbers, it's hard to argue against it. Now, the situation we do run into is next year, the ballot looks very lean. There's nobody that is a first-time eligible player next year that is going to be driving up the ballot. And it seems like the PED guys, unless your name is David Ortiz, are not going to be given a chance. And Andy Pettit is going to be heading into his final 2 years of eligibility. He's not cracked 50%. He got his highest this past year at 48.5%. But I got to be honest, as much as I love Andy Pettit, I don't think of him as a Hall of Famer. Ryan Braun, he's off the ballot. Manny Ramirez fell off the ballot. A-Rod doesn't have much time left. So if the PED guys are not going to get him, who's to say anybody is going to get in on next year's ballot? Well, what do you know? The Mets and Yankees finally woke the hell up and realized that this offseason's going on and that you can, in fact, make moves. You can, in fact, make some signings in the month of January. And we know the Mets added Bo Bichette a couple of weeks ago, but nice surprise by them to wake up last week and say, hey, you know what? Let's make a couple of trades here. Because we have too many infielders on this team. We have too many guys that are somewhat of spare parts or redundant parts. And let's bring in some more sureties as far as big league players are concerned here. Now, you can question the Luis Roberts Jr. trade just because you gave up a young, talented player in Luis Angel Acuna, who you never really gave a true chance to succeed here. And maybe he finally breaks out with the Chicago White Sox. But Luis Roberts Jr. fills a hole, a need that you needed. You had too many infielders on this team. You really had no outfielders. You were relying on Juan Soto, Tyron Taylor, and maybe a couple of your young prospects, whether it be Benj or, at the time, Jet Williams. But you bring in Luis Roberts, who's still reasonably young. He's only 28 years old. He's got a couple of years of team control. And yes, it's been a couple of years since he was truly a dynamic player when he hit 38 home runs back in 2023. But maybe a change of scenery and getting away from a franchise that has been dog crap for the last however many years, the Chicago White Sox will revitalize the engine in him and get him going where he doesn't have to be the guy. On a team where you have Juan Soto, a team where you have Francisco Lindor, a team that now has Bo Bichette, and a team that has some really good pitchers on it now that you added a true ace in Freddie Peralta. Because you could not go into the season. As much as we all love what Nolan McLean did last year, you could not go into a season, a year that is going to be officially counted as his rookie year, counting on this guy to be your ace. Yes, he dragged you kicking and screaming almost across the finish line last year. Was the only thing as the Mets were falling apart post All-Star break that was keeping them relevant, was keeping them over those last 40 games within a puncher's chance of making the postseason. But you could not rely on a rookie being the ace of your staff. You brought in a more sure thing here in Peralta, who's a two-time All-Star, coming off of a phenomenal season when he won 17 games. He makes all of his starts. Him and Dylan Cease are the only two pitchers over the last 3 seasons to strike out at least 200 batters. This guy is a true workhorse type pitcher and didn't get enough attention for that because he was pitching in Milwaukee, where there, a good season is just making the postseason, and beyond that is extra credit. Now, the one bad part about this trade is he's got only 1 year of team control left before he hits free agency. And we know David Stern's history. He does not lock up veteran pitchers to anything more than 3-year contracts. Even for a guy that was someone that he drafted and developed when he was still running the Milwaukee Brewers in Peralta, he was kind of dancing around that when asked by the media a couple of days ago. But this trade now adds depth and surety to your rotation. You go into the season with a rotation of Peralta, McClain, Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, who's battled some injuries, but when healthy is still a respectable pitcher. And then you figure out what you do with your fifth spot. I personally would go with Jonah Tong or add another pitcher in there. You still have David Peterson there, who forgot to mention amongst that initial group. So you got Peralta, McClain, Peterson, Manaea, and Senga. That's 5 guys. If you want to go 6-man rotation to protect Senga and protect the young pitchers, then you go with Jonah Tong as maybe kind of a swing man role. But if you want to upgrade this staff even more, I'm telling Clay Holmes, I don't care that we're paying you $13 million. Setup men in this sport are now getting paid. You go rejoin your former teammate Luke Weaver and another former Yankee in Devin Williams, and you form a pretty badass back end of that bullpen. With those two now adding this Tobias Myers, who also came in this trade, and you upgrade your pitching staff that way. Because it was a large chunk of this collapse last year was not your offense, it was the pitching. Down the stretch, the starters other than McClain were not going deep in the game. You wore out that bullpen, a bullpen that outside of Edwin Diaz, you couldn't trust anybody. And even though you didn't bring him back, you still brought in some very respectable relief pitchers in Devin Williams, in Luke Weaver. And you can continue to upgrade that with Myers now part of this. And if you stick Clay Holmes back where he belongs, pitching out of the bullpen. And for as much as I can't stand Brian Cashman, I do have to give him and the Yankees organization credit. They held firm to their stance on Cody Bellinger. They did not go over what they wanted to go, did not exceed the price tag that they wanted to go with Cody Bellinger, and stuck at a 5-year contract, and were able to get him and Scott Boras to blink and cave and agree to that last Wednesday when he re-signed with the Yankees for a 5-year, $162.5 million contract that includes opt-outs after the second and third season and a $20 million signing bonus to kind of ease some of the luxury tax pain going into this season. Bellinger is kind of a perfect fit for the Yankees. And you saw how easily he adapted to being a Yankee last year, fit right in there, hitting behind Aaron Judge, had a very strong season offensively, and is a guy that you can stick at 4 different positions. He can play left field, can play center field, right field on days Judge needs a blow and you want to DH him, or if you want to give Judge more DH time during that 6 to 7 weeks that you know Giancarlo Stanton will miss during the season, is capable of not just hitting third or cleanup, but you can also lead him off against a tough left-handed pitcher, which I think he's going to do more often than not this year, as the league now has a playbook on Trent Grisham, and he's not going to catch people by surprise. I have not in any way been in love with this Yankee offseason, and that they've made some decent moves in bringing back Ahmed Rosario for the bench, bringing back Ryan Yarbrough as a swing guy, but you've made no upgrades to the bullpen ahead of closer David Bednar. You've brought back Trent Grisham on what I thought was the ultimate mistake, where you got caught with your pants down trying to be the cutest guy in the room with this nonsense of offering him the qualifying offer, when you know no one was going to give him a multi-year contract at $22 million per season or anything that matched that. I mean, you saw earlier today, Harrison Bader agreed to a 2-year, $20 million deal with the Giants, and career-wise, Bader and Trent Grisham are kind of the same player, a borderline everyday regular player that's good defensively but has their limits offensively, and when they're not hitting home runs are kind of a zero. Hell, I would argue that Bader is the better defensive player than Grisham, and the analytics show that last year. So there's still a lot to be annoyed about with this offseason when the starter that you added in Ryan Weathers is a guy that's injury prone and only made 24 starts the last 2 seasons. No upgrades to the bullpen, and you're relying on Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon to just come off of surgeries and be the horses that you sign them to be once they make their first starts. That's a lot of question marks you're coming into this year with this pitching staff. And you better pray to God that Giancarlo Stanton can stay healthy and be a regular in that lineup, and that Aaron Judge doesn't have one of those minor injuries that knocks him out for a month. Because those guys, along with Bellinger, are really what carries this offense. When you have a third baseman in Ryan McMahon that struggled offensively upon coming to New York last year, a shortstop in Anthony Volpe, who's not going to start the season due to shoulder surgery, but most Yankee fans like myself would shoot up to the moon. You keep hearing trade rumors when it comes to Jazz Chisholm as he's entering his walk year. You don't know what position to stick Ben Rice at, and there's a debate on who's the catcher, him or Austin Wells. So there's still a lot of questions that surround this team as we enter the final 2 weeks of this offseason before pitchers and catchers report to spring training, and yet you still have the owner bitching and moaning about finance. Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 from Monday, January 26th, 2026. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a fun, safe, happy, healthy week, even despite this crazy weather we're having. Because remember, folks, you get one life, so you might as well live it up to the fullest. And I'll talk to you guys again, hopefully back in the studios next Monday afternoon. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody.
I have had enough of you!
Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will ya?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.